This is a conversation with Cynthia, one of my dedicated students who has been on an incredible journey of learning Polish and reconnecting with her heritage. In this episode, we dive into her experiences, challenges, and the emotional moments that shaped her connection to Poland. Beyond language learning, we explore fascinating topics like her deep-rooted Polish heritage and the impact of growing up in a Polish-American community. Her emotional arrival in Poland, where she was moved to tears upon landing in Warsaw, exploring Poland from Krakow to the salt mine, and even discovering she was just steps away from long-lost family in Brochów. Polish language struggles and victories, why learning Polish is both frustrating and rewarding, and how it connects her to childhood memories. Preserving Polish traditions, how she learned to make pierogi from her grandmother, and why keeping cultural traditions alive matters. The resilience of Polish people, why Cynthia believes Polish history and culture deserve more recognition, especially among Polish Americans. We also discuss topics like education, military, Donald Trump, and leadership. This is an inspiring and heartfelt conversation for anyone passionate about language learning, heritage, and cultural identity. My ultimate goal is to create the best online Polish language course, and Cynthia's story is a part of that journey. But it doesn't stop there. You can help too. Together, we can build something truly meaningful for people learning Polish around the world. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. What do you think should be included in the course? Let's make this journey of learning Polish collaborative, engaging, and impactful. Thank you. So, the first question is, what inspired you to start learning Polish?
My mother was first generation Polish. Her parents immigrated from Poland. Um, she was one of 12, grew up in one of 4 Polish communities in Baltimore. And I heard the language pretty much my entire life until Bushy died. So, and I had friends that were Polish, so no matter where I went, I always heard Polish as a child. Unfortunately, no one's parents taught our generation because they didn't want us to know what they were saying.
Yeah.
And then when Bushy died, they just stopped speaking it for whatever reason. They could never say why. But there would be times, when my mother would forget that I didn't understand it anymore, and she would say something in Polish. And then we were going to Poland. And I thought, oh, if I get like Rosetta Stone, it'll jog my memory and I'll remember. Well, it didn't. So, so when we got back, I started taking Polish classes at the Polish Alliance downtown. But
Okay.
I just always felt it was really sad that when my mother's generation was gone, that language was gone.
Yeah.
So
So Bushi, this was your grandmother, right?
my grandmother, I never heard babcia until I was about 18 years old, and another friend, Polish friend, because all my Polish friends, it was Bushy
Yeah.
or Busha, and we were talking to somebody else, and they referred to their grandmother as babcia, and we're like, who was that? And they went, oh, I'm Polish, it's my grandmother. And we like looked at each other because we had never heard that term. So yes, Bushy was my grandmother. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And she was born in Poland, right?
She was born in Poland, yes.
Okay.
And so was Jaji. Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about her.
Bushy was special. Um, I didn't know Jaji. Jaji died when my mom was only 14. So I didn't know him. I only know him from stories and, the few pictures that they have. Um, Bushy was fun. Bushy was a party girl. Um, and now like I would ask her to teach me how to make some Polish dishes, but I would have to go up there with my measuring spoons and my cups because she just she used to use this little coffee cup back when they were really tiny and I'd be like, no, no, no. Where I have one aunt that told me, she said, did she tell you she was only going to teach you once? And I said, mm-mm. She said, when I would ask her, she'd say, I'll show you once. And I said, no. But Bushy, she was fun. She did like to party. She liked to dance. She liked her, oh, Manischewitz wine, which is like awful. Um, it, it was horrible, but she was a lot of fun. She was very short, got shorter as she got older. Her English was not very good, but to me, she spoke fine. But
Yeah.
she was special. I just feel she was one of a kind. Uh, she was tough. She was an uneducated peasant, but she was very intelligent. She was special. She was social butterfly. She watched me up till I was around 4, so I heard Polish all the time. And it would take us pretty much all day to get to the next block because she would talk to everyone on the street. She was very independent. She lived alone until she died, and she was 88 when she died. And she would walk to church, and she would have to walk up this pretty steep hill to get to church. But she was very independent, and I think because of that, like my mother, my aunts, they were very independent women. But she had to be. She still had half of her 12 children to raise on her own when Jaji died.
And were there many Polish people where you lived?
When I grew up, there were a lot of the first generation and then second generation Polish, because all of the Polish people from the neighborhood that my mother grew up in moved to this area because it was just being built. So growing up, yes, I was still around a lot of Polish people. My friends had at least one Polish grandparent, some two. So yeah, there. My mother, no matter where we went, she knew someone. Even when my children were older and playing soccer, she knew most of the grandparents on the field because they were from her neighborhood.
And what other nationalities were there?
Well, Baltimore is very diverse. They had a lot of ethnic neighborhoods because what a lot of people don't realize is all of the immigrants did not come through Ellis Island in New York. Baltimore was a huge port. My grandparents came through Baltimore, Locust Point. So we had Little Italy, we had Greektown, there was a German community, there were communities for pretty much every European nationality in Baltimore. But there was a huge Polish community. There were 4 Polish communities. My mother grew up in one of 4.
Okay. Were the majority of people over there Polish then?
Um, I would probably say yes, but you also had a huge Italian community. Like I say, you had ethnic communities all over the city,
Yeah.
Baltimore City, because Baltimore was an entry port like Ellis Island in New York. So, but I do think you had, the majority might have been Polish, but I'm not sure.
Okay, okay. And when did you travel to Poland?
In 2018, I am the only person in the family that went to Poland. Never thought I'd get there, but I did. And I cried when I landed. When we landed in Warsaw, I started to cry because it was one of those things where my mother, she would have loved to have gone, but she would have never handled the flight. She didn't like confined spaces. She just wanted to know where she came from. And I just, now my husband, he had never heard Polish. So when he heard Polish, he was like, what is that?
Ah.
So it was very rewarding to have gone to Poland. I wish that we had had more time and I could have explored more of Poland, but I did get to where Jaji was from. I did not get to where Bushy was from.
And where exactly did you go?
Well, now that I know how to say it correctly, Brochów.
Yes.
But when I was there and I'd say Brochów, like you'd say in English, the only person that knew where I was talking about was our driver from the airport.
Okay.
Everybody else just didn't know where that is.
So tell me more about what you saw in Poland.
Well, of course, we did the normal stuff. We went to Auschwitz, we went to the salt mine, which was just absolutely unbelievable, Krakow, and we got to see both sides of Krakow because the one day we had signed up to do it one day, but they only had like one person, so they moved us to that day. And we saw the main, the castle and the market and all of that kind of good stuff. But then the second day, they took us to the Jewish section.
Yeah.
So we got to see both sides of that. So that was very interesting. Auschwitz was very haunting. It's hard to describe how you feel when you're standing on that platform where everyone stood with the dogs and all of that kind of stuff. But when we went to Brochów, I now know that I was only like 4 doors away from a relative who lives by the church, Jaji's church, which was just beautiful. And I was able to get inside the church. So that was a very different feeling to be inside a church that I know my grandfather was in. So that was wasn't fun getting there though, because in Poland it's not like here on the highways where you'll go, exit for this in a mile, exit in half a mile, exit in a quarter of a mile. All of a sudden I'm like, we missed the exit. So I think it was supposed to take us about an hour to get there, and I think it took us 3 because we were so lost. And my phone didn't work, so I couldn't use Google Maps.
Okay. And why do you think it's important for Polish Americans or just for anyone with immigrant roots to visit places, tied to their family's heritage?
So that you see where your relatives or your ancestors came from. Like I always felt it was very sad that when my mother's generation died out, that connection to Poland was gone. And I was very sad that my children would not experience that. However, they did get to experience that because my in-laws are foreign, they're immigrants. So my children did have, although they're German, so, but they did get to experience the German culture. They hear the accents, which to them they don't hear, just like I didn't hear that. But they had the added benefit of meeting European family, which we didn't have because those relatives travel here kind of on a regular basis. So they got to know German relatives, they got to know Swiss relatives. And I think it's important that they know where they come from and they have some understanding. For people that are of Polish descent, I don't think that they, especially today, understand how resilient the Polish people are. That even under foreign rule, that Poland was gone from the map multiple times through history, they still identified as Polish. They did not identify as the nationality that was ruling them. My grandparents came from the Russian sector of Poland. So on the ship's manifest, they immigrated from Russian, but they were Polish. They never gave up their language. They never gave up their culture. And I think that shows the resiliency of the Polish people. And I don't think people understand that they're a very strong people.
Yes.
But I just feel that because most people today are removed from that immigrant generation, they don't appreciate that culture, that heritage. Like I grew up with it. We went to the big Polish weddings. You learned, you don't remember learning how to polka, but you know how to do that. And today they don't have any of, they don't have any of that. They don't eat a lot of the, the ethnic foods, which were just normal for us. Now they all want the Mexican foods, the tacos and I'm not a big Mexican food fan, so I don't even remember most of them. But quesadillas, those kind of things, instead of the gołąbki and the pierogi. Now, the one thing that I was shocked to learn in Poland, because Bushy always made the potato and cheese, that was Ruski. That's just what we grew. That's where there were all kind of different, a variety of those that we did try when we were there. But Bushy always made Ruski. But I didn't know that it was Ruski. It was just, that's what she made.
Yeah.
That's what I make, because that's what I grew up on.
And what else did you do in Poland? Think you went to Gdańsk as well?
No, we were just in the Warsaw area, and we went to Krakow, and we were very limited in time because we were 2 weeks and we spent 1 week in Germany. So you go from hearing German for a week and then you hear Polish, which to me was music to my ears. But my husband was, I think I told you this, that I have a cousin who, her husband, the first time he heard my aunt on the phone talking Polish, probably to my mother, he said to her, "Your mother's drunk." And she goes, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Listen to her. She's just babbling." And she goes, "She's talking Polish." So he had never heard, Polish either. So we did the Warsaw, the Krakow. We did walk around Warsaw a lot. There's that beautiful park that was across from our hotel. We walked down to the Vistula, right? Which there was this restaurant which just flabbergasted me because they had tables and chairs in the sand. And I thought that was pretty cool because I've never seen a restaurant have tables and chairs in this, literally in the sand. But you know, we walked down to the remnants of the ghetto. We went to that museum, the Jewish, I think the Jewish Ghetto
Yeah,
Museum.
yeah.
But we walked around Warsaw a lot. We went to the old Warsaw. We went to the Katian Museum. I found that very, very interesting as well. So I
And
loved Krakow, but the Krakow days were long days. They were 20-hour days. So they would pick us up at 6:30 in the morning and we would get back like at midnight or, 12:30 in the morning. So those were extremely long days, but very, very interesting days.
have you ever asked your grandparents why they moved to the US? Why they left Poland?
Um, I don't know specifically. I have one cousin that has a theory that Jaji came to avoid conscription.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Mm.
Was she? I'm not sure. She had an uncle here. The story goes that her father brought her over here and was supposed to go back and bring the rest of the family, but then the war broke out. Um, he did not come with her because on the ship's manifest, he's not listed. So she came by herself. Whether he was supposed to come later, again, we don't know. They would always say if they asked Bushy about the old country, she'd say it doesn't matter. So no one knows for sure.
What do you think?
Um, I don't know. I feel like Bushy was an independent person and she wanted to, maybe come here because she did have family here and try something different. Jaji, I don't know. I mean, the theory is good to avoid conscription. He
Mm.
had two cousins here that sponsored him. Bushy's uncle sponsored her. I know that Bushy lived with that uncle initially. Not sure where Jaji lived when he came, probably with his cousins. But I don't know because they didn't talk about, and that I think it was also very normal. That generation, they came, that was it. And I have made contact with two relatives in Poland on Jaji's side, and the one cousin has told me that her grandmother would say, I had two brothers that went to America, and then we never heard from them. So Jaji did have a brother here as well. He came after Jaji. I'm not sure if Jaji or the cousin sponsored him. But he was killed in a work-related accident when he was young, so I don't know much about him either.
Okay. And when you look at today's geopolitical situation in Europe and the war in Ukraine, do you think a lot has changed? I mean, World War II was basically in Poland, and now you have this war next to Poland.
Very close to Poland.
Yeah, so what do you think about this?
I think Poland is better prepared. I don't think that they're living with their heads in the sand. I think they're more aware, they're not naive, but I think most people at the, prior to World War II were naive. I think Poland is trying to posture itself because they have learned from the past. They don't want to repeat the past. Where I think some other countries, they're not preparing for what may come. They're more of that appeasement, but You can't give them an inch because then they take a yard. I don't know if y'all say that in Polish, but you
Yeah,
know.
we do.
So, but I do think Poland, sorry,
And
they've learned, and they do not want to be conquered again. They want to remain an independent country, and we know they don't like the Russians, and they definitely don't want to come under the Russian satellite system again.
yeah. Tell me about your dogs.
Well, I have always have a German Shepherd. That's my favorite breed.
Yeah,
I've had a German Shepherd for over 40 years. I love German Shepherds as a child. Then my other dog is a Australian Shepherd from Azerbaijan.
great.
He's a little crazy. My vet thinks he has some Akita in him, which would explain some of that craziness, but he was very abused. So he's a very skittish dog. But my second dog is usually a lap dog, but I don't have a lap dog because my husband decided he wanted this dog. But he's a great dog. He's just, he just has some issues and you learn to deal with them, just like people.
Yeah.
But they get along really well. I have my son's dog, which is a pit bull, quite frequently, but Jax doesn't like him. So we have to separate them. But they used to get along really well. But I have to have dogs. I love dogs. But they are sometimes like, they bark if a leaf falls. So they bark at everything. They bark when a car turns off the main road and I don't even see that car, but they know that car's coming down the street. And they want, like, if I have delivery people, they want them to know that they're in this house.
And why do you like this breed? Why German Shepherd?
I don't know. The German Shepherd? I
Yeah.
don't know. I have always liked German Shepherds, even as a child. There was a girl across the street that had one. Everybody was afraid of that dog but me. There was another family across the street that they had a German Shepherd that never left the yard. The yard was not fenced. And this was, before electric fences or shock collars or anything like that. This dog was so well trained. My dad had friends that he had a friend that was a police officer and he was a canine officer. So I just have always liked German Shepherds. I don't know why. I love them. They're just my breed.
Okay.
I've had a white one. I've had a long-haired one. I've had one that was almost completely black, but I want a complete black one before I die.
Nice. And is
But
this breed popular in Maryland?
actually,
Would you say?
German Shepherds are a very popular breed.
Okay.
You either love them or hate them. They're like pit bulls. You love them or hate them. My son has one because he grew up with German Shepherds, and he's got a big dog. His German Shepherd's huge. But people are afraid of German Shepherds. They have a lot of misconceptions about German Shepherds. I think it's because of the use of them during World War II. But they're great dogs. They're very protective. And they are really good with children, even though people might think not.
Yeah.
They are, and they're very protective. So I don't know why people are afraid of them, but they are. But I love them.
And tell me about your grandchildren.
I have two. I have Maverick and I have Jet, who I call my little jet ski. Although he's not very little. He's not quite a year old, but he's going to take after my daughter-in-law's family, and they're larger.
Yeah.
Maverick's going to take after our side and be, I think, smaller. Um, Maverick is funny, like, so like him, like he hears my mother-in-law talk, he knows it's her. He doesn't hear the accent. So it's kind of like I was with all the Polish people where my mom grew up. Um, Maverick is at that age. He will be 4 in July. He's a lot of fun. So he enjoys doing all the new things. And I am trying to teach him easy Polish phrases. So he'll repeat them and then I'll go, it's Polish. And he'll go, Polish? What? You know, things like that. And then when I try to explain to him that Oma's German, he goes, German? What? What is that? So he doesn't understand, you know, the nationality stuff. But I'm trying to teach him, like, you know, talk and yeah, you know, easy stuff. I want him, I would like to be able to pass some of that heritage onto him.
Yeah, yeah. I
I hope to
remember.
do the same thing with Jet when Jet's a little older.
I remember when you first contacted me, and you were writing about this, that back then you had only Maverick, right?
Well, he
And
wasn't even here yet.
oh, he
That's how,
wasn't even there.
no, that's how long I've been working with you.
Okay, okay. I thought
Mm-mm.
he was just
He was
born.
close. He was close.
Okay, okay. And you wrote that you want to learn Polish not only because of your heritage, but because of him, that you wanted to teach him Polish, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this was very interesting to me. Um,
Well,
right
my,
now, if you
go ahead, I'm sorry.
okay,
No, my
no,
mother
no,
was she was very proud of her heritage. Um, you couldn't tell her a Polish joke. It made her mad because they made Polish people sound, you know, absolutely stupid. And I think a lot of that interest in my heritage comes not only from being around all the old Polish people when I was a kid, but, you know, my mother's pride in her heritage. And I feel like you should pass that on. That the Polish history is unbelievable, and it should be passed on. I mean, like when I have read stuff that I just find fascinating, even though you know how resilient they are. It is still mind-boggling that they have been able to survive and keep their culture, their customs, their language. I'm sure they've, you know, some foreign terminology has moved in over the years, but I want them to, you know, it's like my mother wanted to know where she came from. I want them to know that they have this Polish heritage in their background.
yeah,
So, you know.
yeah. Um, so let's talk a little bit about education. What what do you think are the biggest differences between, you know, the time when you went to school and between what's going on right now in the US?
I think the education system of today is absolutely horrendous. And my daughter-in-law is a teacher. She is a department head in a high school of the math department. When I went to school, they focused initially on basics. You know, now I did go to a Catholic school, but the public schools were basically the same. You know, you did get a slightly better education in the Catholic school, but the public schools did not graduate idiots like they do today. Um, you know, when we went to school, you initially were focused on, you know, phonics, which they don't teach anymore, reading, but not by sight words. Like now they have them, they memorize words. So when you get older, if you come across a word and you don't know how to say it, they can't phonetically pronounce it because they didn't learn phonics. So we learned how to read. We learned math, but you learned very simple math. You learned the basics. You learned how to add. You learned how to subtract. Then you learned how to do like double digits. And now in first grade in kindergarten they'll have reading, social studies, science, music, gym, art.
Geopolitics.
All of this stuff where we had phonics. You learned how to write. You had math, reading, and then you had religion because it was a Catholic school. So I didn't get, we called it geography, now they call it social studies, till I was in 4th grade. So for 1st through 3rd, you're learning the basics. I didn't get science till I was in 8th grade. A 1st grader has no concept. It's just, and now when they read, they teach them sight words. So they look at the, and math, I don't understand math. The way they teach math now, I just don't understand it. And my sister raises her grandson, and he's in 4th grade. He brings home math. She doesn't understand it. She's got to get my daughter-in-law to come over there and explain it to her, because like instead of oh God, I can't even think of some of the examples that she has showed me. I just go, I just don't get it. But then they also, they have worked all of that wokeism into school.
What's that? What's that exactly?
Well, it's very liberal. I mean, even in like 1st and 2nd grades, they would have these classes 1 or 2 days a week. And initially you were able to opt your child out of it. And my sister did, because it was talking about, maybe you have 2 dads, maybe you have 2 moms, but then they also started working in all this transgender and inclusiveness and all of that kind of stuff. And then last year she wasn't able to opt him out, so she kept him home. I mean, I just, that kind of thing I don't think belongs in school.
So for the last 4 years, when we were talking about these things, it seemed to me, and I think also to you, that there was no hope. Now it seems a little bit different. So do you think these things will improve now? Do you think it's going to be better? Do you think it's going to be even better than it was when you went to school?
It's going to take a while. It's not going to be, like it took a long time for it to get as bad as it did. So it's going to take a long time for it to get fixed. But they need to get back to basics. When I was in school and you learned something new, like say you're learning long division, whatever grade I learned long division in. And we typically had tests on Friday. We had a test all subjects, you got tested on Friday. But perhaps the class didn't grasp that concept as a whole. Like the majority of the class didn't get it. So we didn't have that test. We reviewed the chapter, perhaps we had it next week. Or if we did the test and the majority of the class did poorly, then we reviewed that chapter, where now they can't, and the teachers made up their own tests. Now they're given the test, they're given a schedule, they move on whether the class understands it or not. They take that test. whether the class understands it or not. You can't fail a child. So they get 50% for writing their name on the paper. They don't have to answer a question, but they can't
But,
fail the test.
so they can pass the Polish language test.
Yes. So, so this is why you're graduating kids that they can't read, they can't do math. Like when you go to a store, if they give you change, they can only give you change because it comes up on the cash register how much change to give you. They don't know how, they can't add in their head. They can't do anything in their head. They're allowed to use calculators and stuff in school. We had to do it all in our head. So it's going to take a long time, but they also need to go back to teaching history. Like a lot of this generation, they don't have pride in the country because they don't teach what prior generations have done to allow them to have the life that they have today. And what's really sad is that greatest generation, there's not many of that generation left. So and they don't understand what that generation did.
I need to ask you this question. What happened to America? What happened to the U.S.? When you look at like the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and you look the last 10 years.
I don't know. The 60s, that was my generation. So the 60s, that was the first time I think that you had young people standing up and saying, I'm not going to go fight and die in a country that doesn't matter to me. Like, World War II, it mattered. Vietnam War did not. My father was part of that greatest generation, so he was one of those, they tell you to go, you go. And I go to Canada. And he'd go, no, you wouldn't. My mother said, I'd help her. So my father and I used to have very spirited discussions over the Vietnam War and I was a teenager and I was not quite old enough to go participate in those, anti-war protests, because I would have, the ones in DC and stuff. So that was the first time. And of course we were going to be, the end of the U.S., but we all matured and, all of that kind of good stuff. But I don't know what happened. I think because they stopped teaching the history in school. They don't know about the Civil War. Like we had to know the battles, the generals, we had to know all of this stuff. They don't teach any of that stuff. There came a time where the younger generation had no respect for the military. And you need the military. And people don't appreciate what the people in the military, as well as their families, give up for you to have the freedom to do what you do. And that's one of the things that bothers me the most, because I am military, we are a military family. You know this. My husband did 28 years. My son's in the Army. I have another son in federal law enforcement. So they're kind of like a legacy. They do it because they grew up with it. That type of life is very normal to them. But even before I met my husband and became part of the military family, I still respected the military. Like, even though I was very much against the Vietnam War, I was never against the soldiers that went and fought, because they were doing their job. I was against the war, but not against them. I always respected what the military did. I would have never in my life believed that this country was going as far left as it was going. And I don't think it was the majority of the people that were going left. It was that silent majority. Because I don't think most people in this country want to live under socialism. I don't think you want to live under censorship. You don't want to be told what you think. And I was glad, and I have I have cousins. Well, like I say, all of my mother's brothers fought in the war. Luckily, they all came back. But we have talked where we're glad that they're not here to see what this country, where it was heading, because it was not the country they fought for. And my dad was in the Navy, his brother was in the Marines. I had uncles that fought in the South Pacific. I had uncles that fought in Europe. This country was not the country they went to war and fought for. Recruiting numbers showed it. People did not want to go in the military because of the wokeism. Now, my son went in the Army in 2014, I believe, and he went in anticipating that boot camp to be like tough like my dad told him it was, tough like my husband told him it was, and he was disappointed that it wasn't. They could, if they were having a bad day, they had stress tickets, and they would give it to the drill instructor, and he couldn't yell at them that day. So, but what happened, I don't know. I'm not going to name like specific precedents because, but you'll understand by timelines, because I don't want to be labeled one way or the other. I'm just someone that I really love this country. I am a proud American, so I love this country. I don't want to see it going where it was going. But I feel that the country started changing in 2008. When you started hearing phrases like redistribute the wealth, transform this country, what was wrong with this country? And I think that you have people, and my dad was a diehard Democrat. And I'm not registered to either party, just throw that out there. I'm an independent. But, like there would be times where I'm like, Dad, so let me understand this. You worked really hard for everything, right? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, so you want to give it to people that didn't work? No. I said, well, that's what they're doing. People aren't like they're not really looking at what's happening. They're not looking at that man behind the curtain. And I just feel, those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And because they don't teach the consequences of socialism or communism in school anymore, people don't know that. Like, it sounds great, free college education, free this, but somebody has to pay for it.
Of course.
So I don't know what happened. Well, you sent me that video, and I watched that video, that really old video with that KGB defector. Yeah. And when you watch that, it makes perfect sense. They're very patient, and they accomplish what they set out to do by going through the school system, the university system, And they have slowly brainwashed people to believe that socialism and communism is the way to go. That was a very interesting video. And I've told people about that video many times. I said it's so old because they've mentioned Walter Mondale. That's how old this video is. I said, but that's back when they probably started before that, and that it takes several generations. And by the time you realize it, it's going to take several more to fix it.
Yeah, the video and also the book, Love Letters to America. Both are very interesting, and I've shared them with a lot of my students and friends. I think what happened to America was, and still not sure, maybe still is just a lack of leadership, you know.
Well, you did, you have to go back to Teddy Roosevelt, speak softly and carry a big stick, the United States got to a point where we weren't respected anymore. The grown-ups were supposed to be back in the room, but they weren't. I don't feel. I feel that we have to have influence, but I don't feel that we need to fight everybody's battles. I think that countries have to step up and fight their own battles. I definitely am a person that doesn't want to see the U.S. put boots on the ground in every conflict, because I have seen firsthand the results of those boots on the ground. And that's another thing that most people don't understand, the consequences of putting those boots on the ground and the catastrophic injuries that a lot of those troops experience and then live with the rest of their lives. I have seen it. It's upsetting. It is, you have a lot of pride in those kids and their mothers. I talk to them. I don't know how their optimism, I guess because their son wasn't killed, but I've seen female soldiers missing 2 legs. First time I saw that, I went, my husband was actually in the old Walter Reed Hospital, and they brought this 20-year-old kid in, paralyzed from the neck down. He had been hit with a mortar. His sergeant pulled him out of the way. These are things people don't see. So I don't feel that we have to put boots on the ground everywhere. I don't want to put boots on the ground anywhere. And as a mother that has a child in the Army, I definitely don't want boots on the ground everywhere. Because I see these kids. I remember these kids. And like, that kid will stay with me forever. It was, 20 years old. He was probably paralyzed because they brought him from Germany. They were sending him home because they couldn't do anything for him at Walter Reed. They were sending him to a VA hospital. So that 20-year-old kid was probably paralyzed for the rest of his life. But the U.S., I don't know. We did have a lack of leadership. I know, like right now, people, you don't hear like everyday people complaining. It's the Democrats complaining about all of the wasteful spending that you're finding that they're cutting. Having worked for several government contractors, I know that they get these contracts because they bid low, and then they're constantly putting in change orders because it costs more. And then it's never delivered on time. So there is a lot of wasteful spending. My husband will tell you, he was military. When he retired, he had a GS job, still working, for the government, doing basically the same kind of job. And just the wasteful spending that they do. There is so much waste that happens. So you could cut the deficit by doing away with a lot of these things. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
Zobaczymy, tak?
Zobaczymy. Tak. Zobaczymy. Let's get back to the topic of Polish language. It's been challenging, but at the same time you definitely enjoy it. That's why you learn it.
I do enjoy it.
What do you enjoy is the first question, and the second, what you definitely don't enjoy.
I enjoy the challenge. As your other students, we can all agree it's very challenging. You're going to have your ups and downs. You're going to have your days where I'm a little monkey with the hair sticking out. I look like that. You give me migraines quite frequently.
Me or the grammar?
Well, both. And then when you send me those audio files, I hate those audio files, which is a necessary evil. It is challenging when I hear it spoken correctly, which is not me. It takes me back to a happy time in my life where, I'm sitting in Bush's house with, my cousins and mom, and all the relatives are in the kitchen and, in Polish. Or I'm walking up the street with Bushy and she's talking to, all the old Polish people. It's rewarding when something finally sinks in, and you understand it, and you go, I got this. And then there are some things where you don't think it's going to be as difficult for me, but it is. And then the things that you do think are very difficult, I don't find them that difficult, like the years and the dates and those kind of things. I didn't find that the years were a little funky, but the dates, I was used to the way you do them because I told you my husband had to do that military, so he still writes them like that, so it makes me crazy. But that made sense to me. The 24-hour clock made sense to me because of the military, and then I worked shipping for many years, so that was something that was normal to me. These aspects.
So basically, you have to be a small soldier in order to learn Polish, right?
Well, you have to have a certain mindset. I think I think at least one of your other interviews mentioned where you don't realize it's going to take you a lifetime to learn Polish. You think like, oh, in a year or two, I'll be fluent. That's not happening. That is not going to happen. And you have to come to terms with that. You need to find what works for you. When I first started taking Polish, I was doing it at the Polish Alliance, and it was a group of us. It was fun. I actually learned more than I thought I did but then COVID came, so those classes went away, and then I was able to find classes through a Polish society up in Connecticut, and it was the language professor taught it. So I learned a little bit. That's where I realized I had learned more than I thought I had learned at the beginning, of learning Polish. But then as we moved on, I also realized I wasn't going to learn it like I wanted to, because he would spend, a week on a chapter. So a class was an hour and 15 minutes. So you're not getting it. So that's when I turned to you. And what I do like is you teach it the way I want it to be taught. I didn't want to learn it line by line in a book, because I can do that myself. I like how you mix it up and you use different, you do the audio files, which I'm pretty sure nobody likes.
I like it.
You do, some of the book, you do the back and forth, conversation. So to me, that is a better way to learn. And then, like when I was in school, you don't move on until you have what you're supposed to have for that chapter. So some chapters you're going to spend more time on because the concept is more difficult. I don't give up like your other students say. You don't give up. You can't give up. You have to just put your blinders on and put your head down. But then you have to get up and walk away.
Fight.
If it does, right. If it doesn't, you're going to have days where your head's going to explode. So you just get up and you walk away. And then you're going to have other days where you can sit there and you could work on it for hours, and it comes very easy. When I was taking classes through that Polish Society in Connecticut, I was in a study group, and everybody had ideas on how to do things and categorize things. And so I tried them all, and it was just making me crazy. It was making it harder for me, like having all these places to look. So, I finally simplified it down to what works for me. Just had a thought, I just forgot it. But you have to decide what works for you. What works for you may not work for somebody else. I know one of the hardest things about trying to learn Polish for me is that when I was in school, I was one of those very lucky people that didn't have to study. So I didn't know how to study. I'm still learning how to study, even though I've taken Polish for, well, I think I've been with you 4 years, but I started in 2018. So I have put more time into learning Polish than I had to put into anything that I ever took in school. So that's a little frustrating for me, because I never had to study, and now I do. But you do have to figure out what works for you. And
so you need to learn how to learn.
Yes. And sometimes it's going to take you a while. You're going to try this, maybe you're going to organize your stuff this way. And then you're going to realize, well, that doesn't really work. And then you're going to try a different way. So it may take you multiple times of trying different things to figure out how to organize your stuff or what's going to work for you. Now, the one thing I find very frustrating is that I have such a hard time remembering the easy words.
Maybe they weren't easy.
So or I get the easy words mixed up. So that drives me crazy. That's
because these so-called easy words start with the same letter, and there is 1 or 2 letters difference, or they have different meaning in different contexts, and so on and so on. So
right, and
they're not that easy.
And you have to realize that you're going to have a really good class today, like I did a couple weeks ago. You have a really, really good class, and you're like, yay! And then the next day, you have that class where it's like, give me that gun, shoot me now, because your brain's just not working. But I do like listening to your other interviews, because you do get, like Robert. I really liked his thing where just try to think of what am I going to say if I walk into that store? So just like try to learn with like a little phrase.
Yeah.
So I like that idea. So I say, even though I've been learning, however long, years, you can still pick up tips from other people. And that's a great tip. I mean, and I do kind of do that a little bit. Like when I go to the graveyard to visit my mom, I talk to her in Polish. Now, whether I'm saying it correctly, I don't know, but I try to only say things that I do know how to say. And that's another frustration that, I have is I want to say way more than I know how to say. And that's always been my problem. I could never stick to like the simple, like the go spot go books, like that we learned how to read with, like see spot, run spot, run. So, I could never do that in Polish. I always wanted to, like write a book when I have to write my sentences, and I couldn't do that. So you do have to remember that you have to start small. You're not going to be able to say things. You're going to say them wrong, and you learn from those mistakes. But I really did like Robert's idea of just start with, what am I going to say walking into that store? So I've decided that I'm going to talk to my husband in Polish, even though he doesn't understand what I'm saying.
Great. That's great.
And maybe he'll pick up some things. He does pick up on the real short phrases, and he does use them all the time. But I said to him, I'll tell you what I'm saying.
Right?
Yeah, he loves ala yeah. He likes that one.
Yeah.
He likes that one a lot. And what my sister used to say something to her husband all the time, and he never knew what did she used to say to him? Oh God, I can't remember. But he never knew what she was saying, and then my husband told him. My sister goes, "You had to tell him." He never knew what I was saying. So yes, but it's very difficult. You can't get frustrated. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have to get up and walk away. And then when you come back, it may make perfect sense. But it's not for the, like everyone else says, it's not for the faint of heart. You have to decide, like what Laura said, Polish is not going to win.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about pierogi, because I know you like to prepare them, even with
Oh, I
your
love to make
sister,
them.
right?
Bushy taught me. I called her out one
Yeah.
day, and I was like, Bush, if I bring everything up, will you teach me? So she taught me. So I learned from the best. I do like to make them. So the very first time I made them, I was making them to take out to one of my aunts on Christmas Eve, and we used to celebrate Bushy's birthday on Christmas Eve because her birthday was the 23rd. So it took me, and Bushy used to make like the really big ones, like the size of a plate. So those were the size that I was making. So it took me 12 hours to make 12 of them because I didn't have a rolling pin. So, you have to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I used a mayonnaise jar. So my aunt bought me a rolling pin, which I still have. But I've been making them every year. So probably 50 years now. So I have a process. I can make them by myself, and I have a method, and I'm good.
Can you share it? Can you share it?
The method that I do.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I roll them out, and I cut out so many, and I stuff them, and then I put them, and then I do again, you have to find the method that works for you. So I don't like to do like cut out one, stuff one, do that. I like to cut out multiple, stuff them, and then, I just find that faster than doing a complete one at a time. But it is more fun when you do it with other people. I've taught two of my cousins' daughters how to make them. My sister and I made them before Christmas this year. I just, and when I do them, I feel Bushy standing there. I feel her behind me because she taught me how to make them. So I like pierogi. My husband actually really likes Polish food, so which is a good thing. So he likes kielbasa, and you have to get the real stuff. When you grow up with the real stuff, you can't buy that fake stuff. He likes, kielbasa. He really likes halushki. I think I told you I made that the other day. He really likes that. He likes
Yeah.
glumpi. He likes pierogi too. But he eats anything. He's like Robert. He ate all that kind of weird stuff when he was stationed in the South Pacific. So I was laughing listening to Robert. But no, when I make Polish food, I go back. I'm standing in Bushy's kitchen, and she's standing there. I know it sounds weird, but I just really have that connection to the past. I do believe in spirits, as you know, and I feel her helping me when I'm doing those things. So yeah, I like. We've made my niece. I helped her make sirnik the one day, and that turned out really good. We were really happy with that. What did I see a recipe for the other day? Because I'm on that Polish recipe site on Facebook, so I try recipes that come across there. But people don't realize that there's so many different types of Polish food, not just kielbasa and glumpi and pierogi and.
Oh, there, hundreds of meals
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
yeah.
We didn't like. What's the cold soup? The
Chłodnik?
cold.
Chłodnik.
Yeah, whatever that cold soup is, we had that
Yeah,
in Poland.
chłodnik.
Yeah, we didn't like that.
No?
That was the only.
There, it depends who made it, how they made it.
Well,
Yeah.
our tour guide, it was a restaurant right outside of Auschwitz, and
Oh,
we didn't like that soup.
yeah.
I think that was the only thing we had in Poland that we didn't like.
I need to ask you one more question. When we talked about Donald Trump like last year, 2 years ago, I think sometimes it seemed to us that he might not win, but he won. And why do you think? What happened? Why did he won? And why did he win? And he really won nicely, I think.
I think I think because Joe Biden was an absent president, Kamala Harris was a joke. I think that their policies, I think the open border was one of the biggest things because you had so much crime being committed by illegals. I mean, we had a mother of 5 murdered by an illegal here in Maryland. Actually, my son knew her. They went to the same college. And I think the fact that illegals were getting so much, we had homeless people, we have homeless veterans, and yet they were getting phones and shelter and, prepaid credit cards, and they were getting benefits that we have to pay for. And they were getting them for nothing. And they would, and then I think the policies where they were going so far left, but I think immigration and then inflation, because you go to the grocery store, no matter when you go and you go, what did I buy for $200? There's nothing in your basket, and you spent $200. I think inflation and the border, the border, I think was one of the biggest things. Because again, we're not against immigration, but come here legally. You know, my grandparents came here legally. My in-laws came here legally. I have friends that are immigrants, but they all came here legally. So it's not that we're against immigration. It's just you have to come here legally. And they want to come here and change the country into what they left. Where, like, you know, immigrants of the past, they came here and they wanted to be Americans, but keep their culture. And that's what they did. They kept their language, they kept their culture, they kept their customs, but they wanted to be American. They didn't want to change the country into what they left. And that's what these immigrants coming across the border want to do. And then, you know, we don't know who came across the border because they don't know about the gotaways. So I think the border and inflation and the policy, just the majority of the people, I don't feel, it's like, if you want to be a transgender, that's fine. Don't shove it down my throat. And I feel that's how most people feel, you know. Generally speaking, I think people are accepting of most things, even if you don't understand it. Just don't try to make me agree with you. You know, you have to agree to disagree. And for a long time, you couldn't do that openly. Like, we were able to do it because all of our friends feel the same way. So we didn't have to stifle ourselves. But, you know, you were careful who you said what around, or what you said. Now I just confused myself. Who you were around when you said things. But I think, you know, Trump does have, you know, he is America first, and he is, you know, he kept his promises the last time. For the most part, he was able to do what he said he was going to do. You know, and I'm a great believer in things happen for a reason. My husband laughs at me all the time, but I believe in that very strongly. And I think he had to lose so that the country could see how far left it was moving, so that we could course correct. So I think he had to lose. Like, if he had won 2 consecutive terms, you wouldn't have seen what you're seeing now. Or you wouldn't have seen what happened in the last 4 years.
What's your message to the Polish Americans?
To the Polish Americans?
Yeah.
Well, for the people that still identify as Polish Americans, because, you know, once you get down, you know, maybe past, like, I'm second generation, people, Corbyn does, he knows he's Polish. You know, try to remember that culture. Look, you know, genealogy is such a big thing now. Try to look back and see where you came from. See why people, you know, try to learn Polish history at the time your ancestors came over, and you may have an idea why they came. But I think you should try to keep your heritage. Try to learn where you came from. So, yeah, see, look, I didn't show you this music.
Nice. Yeah. Ego.
So yeah, it be proud of your heritage and the resiliency of the Polish people. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Cindy.
Okay.
And see you in the next one.
Yes. We have class Thursday.
Okay.